Okay. Oh, there's even a bookmark here.
Ah, see? Is it 12? Is it 12? All right, there you go.
The bookmark.
Whatever that is. Very nice. What are you at?
Someone says 14, but we'll go forward from there. Okay. Hi everyone. I know I'm not Rabbi Shimon, and so we'll have to meet up and fill his shoes in the meantime. He's still in Israel, and so I'll be filling in for the meantime. Yirat Hashem will try understanding this is an amazing sefer, and I heard we're on page 12 in the Art Scroll Jaffa edition, so those who are online can follow along. We're going to start with V'hinei HaKatuv Omer Hen Yirat Hashem Hi Chochma. So the verse says in the Yov that fear of Hashem is wisdom. We know that also that the in Tehillim it says Rashit Chochma Yirat Adonai. The first stages of fear of God, Rashit Chochma Yirat Adonai. The first stages of wisdom is the fear of God, and of course, as we're going to see, that this is the building blocks of all of Messilat Yesharim, is really to get us into that mindset of Yirat Hashem, fear of God. And we'll see there's levels of fear of God. There's not just necessarily one specific way to fear God, and we'll see that B'ezrat Hashem coming up. And our sages said in Masechet Shabbat, Hen achat. Sheken belashon Yevani korin leachat hen. So when it says Hen Yirat Hashem Hi Chochma, it means that one, because and sometimes the Gemara uses they learn from the language of the Tanakh also in different languages. So over here, Hen in Greek is also one, meaning to say that the only the fear of God is one wisdom, meaning it's the primary wisdom. Like what we said, Rashit Chochma, like it says in Tehillim, Rashit Chochma Yirat Hashem. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of Hashem. It's also interesting. The hen, it's specifically. Usually we say, if you look at the letters in the Hebrew alphabet, we have 22 letters, and if you go through the letters. For example, let's say Aleph through Tet, there's going to be Aleph combines with Tet to give you 10. Bet combines with Chet to give you 10 in Gematria, because Bet is 2 and Chet is 8, so that gives you 10. Gimel combines with Zayin, 3 combines with 7 to give you 10. And then, of course, Daled and Vav, 4 and 6 give you 10. What's the only one without a counterpart to make it to 10? That's 5, hey. And then also if we go to the 20s, or the 10s, right? 10 and 90, Yud and Tzadik. 20 and 80, Chaf and Pei. And so on, until we get to the middle of those, which is also going to be Nun. Nun is 50, which means it also doesn't have a counterpart. If you go then to the hundreds there's only 4 letters, so all of those, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Taf, so those all each have their own partners. So Hen is also those letters that don't have a counterpart. It says that there's 70 nations in the world. We had in this week's last parsha, Rashi comments that if you count up all of the offerings offered on Sukkot, all of the bull offerings, you get 70. And it started off 14, 13, 12. It was diminishing to represent that just like in the end of days, the 70 nations will diminish. So too, we represent that, we symbolize that with the diminishing of the offerings in Sukkot, that it goes from 14 until you get to 1, which is only Am Yisrael. So there's 70 nations, and then we have Am Yisrael, which is the 71st nation. So every nation has a counterpart to them. And that's what we say in Tehillim, Ele barechev ve'ele basusim. Ele is Aleph and then Lamed Hey. Lamed Hey is 35. So you have 35 and 35 that combine to 70. So there's always a counterpart to the nations. There's only one nation that doesn't have a counterpart. It's the odd one out, and that's why everyone hates us, is the Jews. And it says, just like the Jews are the odd ones out, also these letters, Hen, Hey and Nun, are also the odd ones out. But that's fine, because we also have the one true a counterpart or the zivug, the match to us, and that's Hashem. And similarly, in the days of the week, right? We have Monday combines with Friday, or Sunday combines with a Friday. Monday, Thursday, Wednesday, and Tuesday. What's the only day of the week that doesn't have a counterpart? That's Shabbat. And so the Shabbat is a special day of the week for the Jews, so that we combine to Hashem. It all matches up succinctly, and that's why the sages, they represent it, they kind of symbolize that, and they say the best time for a man to be with his wife is on Friday night. And usually what a lot of the Sephardic tradition is to read Shir HaShirim before entering Shabbat. Shir HaShirim, the Song of the Songs, whole Megillah, the whole topic over there is the connection between man and God in the kind of representation of man and wife. And over there it's talking about the bond between the love between the man and the wife. It's really talking about the bond between Hashem and Am Yisrael. And so it's talking, and when do we read this? We're reading this specifically as we enter Shabbat, which is the one day of the week that doesn't have a counterpart. And so when we're saying Hen Yirat Hashem Hi Chochmah, it's specifically talking to Am Yisrael. Hen, which is the only letters that don't have a counterpart, which is a representation of Am Yisrael that doesn't have a counterpart. They're the odd one out. Yirat Hashem Hi Chochmah, and that's what we're saying. That's the Yirat Hashem, the real nation that can only have Yirat Hashem. It's specifically going to be Am Yisrael, because we're the only ones that have the true Chochmah. The true Chochmah is the Torah. The Torah is the only Chochmah. Everything else is it says that that everything else is kind of it's kind of like textbook knowledge, right? So textbook knowledge is something that is written down. It's there, and you wait until the next edition of the textbook comes out when they make new editions. They have different theories that come out, whatever it may be. The Torah is a Torah Temed, it's a Torah Chai, it's a living Torah, meaning the Torah is never going to change, but the way that it's interpreted will always be new, will always be fresh, and so it's the same verses, and you just see that it's unlimited knowledge in it. So we see that the source of knowledge is Chochmah, is the Torah.
So Chochmah means message? Or
say that again?
Chochmah?
What?
Chochmah, the word that you just said, what does that mean?
Chochmah. Chochmah means wisdom. Sorry.
Wisdom.
Yeah. Chochmah means wisdom. But it's also the... so we're saying wisdom, yeah. Wisdom in general is usually defined in the sense of smarts, intellect. But on the sages bring down that Chochmah, if you change the letters Chochmah, it's Koach Ma. Koach is strength, and Ma is, in basic Hebrew, what? All right, when you ask what's that, you say Mazeh. What's that? The idea of Koach Ma, Chochmah, is you're pulling the strength of a man is able to pull from that which is unknown, meaning from Hashem. Hashem is the ultimate source of knowledge. And the real chokhmah then, the real wisdom, is when you're able to tap into Hashem's knowledge, and pull that out and bring it into actuality. And we'll see that that's actually how the Ramchal, and we're going to see that in the Bright of Pinchas ben Yair, that he says, after you get through the whole Sefer, you're going to get to the level of Kedusha, and then you're going to get to Ruach HaKodesh. And then after Ruach HaKodesh, you'll get to Tchiyat HaMeitim, you'll be able to revive the dead. So it says Ruach HaKodesh. What's Ruach HaKodesh? Because Ruach HaKodesh, we know the sages that have Ruach HaKodesh, they're able to, what is it? It's tapping into Hashem's wisdom. Hashem has like a pool of wisdom that you're able to tap into, you're able to draw from, and that's going to be specifically when you attain the level of Kedusha, which we'll see is basically you're connecting to Hashem on such a great level. So that's another interpretation of Hen. So we see that it's again specifically talking about the Jews, and that how we are specifically connecting with Hashem, and that's done primarily through the fear. Hare hashehayira hi chokhmah. We're going to say not only is fear fear is a prerequisite to wisdom, but we're going to say that not only it's a prerequisite to wisdom, but it is wisdom itself. V'hi levada chokhmah. And really you're saying that it itself is the idea of wisdom. Like what we said, if you're saying that chokhmah is the ability to take from Hashem, right? So really the chokhmah, the wisdom is Hashem in itself. We're just pulling from that and we're articulating it. We're articulating Hashem in words. And so then the Yirah of Hashem, the fear of Hashem, is the only way to fully grasp that. And so he's saying it's not only a prerequisite, it is wisdom, which is it's a novel interpretation of the Ramchal. We know that the Ramchal was a great Makubal. He was a great so layered in all of this. It seems very basic. It seems from the words you might think it's very simple, but layered in it is a great depth of also Kabbalistic learnings. Now, you can't call wisdom something that does not require intense study. Meaning, if you just have something that's on a basic level, like he's mentioned earlier, that this book isn't to be taken at a one-time read. You have to continue reading and read it on and on, because that's the only way you're going to get something out of it. To completely and truly understand something, you can't learn it once and say, okay, I learned it. It's a constant act, that learning that has to be taken into account every single day or every single period of time. אך האמת היא כי עיון גדול צריך על כל הדברים האלה, לדעת אותם באמת. That the truth, what true is that when you study something so well in such a depth that you will know them in and out, ולא על צד הדמיון והסברה והחוזבת, and not based on faulty thinking and just based on their own opinions. כל שכן לקנות אותם להשיגים. All the more so is it necessary to affect and acquire these things so that they become part of one's life. So we're saying that there's really two sides to this. There's the first side of acquiring wisdom, is that first you need to have some sort of yirah. You have to have some sort of fear, because that's going to be the basis of all the wisdom. The Gemara says that the Torah is a sam chayim and a sam mavet. It's a elixir of life and it's an elixir of death, and it depends on how you use it. Because if someone uses it for the wrong reasons, it can bring death to the world. And we've seen that with, for example, Yerovam ben Nevat. They said Yerovam ben Nevat was one of the greatest Torah scholars that ever existed in Israel. It says when he was little, that there was a time that he was going to die, and there was a big tumult in Shamayim. All of the angels came to Hashem and said, "Don't kill him, don't kill him." I said, "Not kill him. He's going to be a rasha. He's going to bring and make 2 egels, 2 golden calves, set them that people can't come into Jerusalem. He's going to make such a mess of the Jewish nation. You don't want me to kill him now? Nip it in the bud?" They said, "No, because of his Torah. His Torah is so sweet. It's his chidushim are so beautiful that we wanted to learn from it." What was his downfall, though, was his ga'ava, his pride. You see, usually when you're doing construction, right, you need to have a sturdy foundation. Yirat Shamayim, Yirat Hashem is that foundation. If that foundation is even a little bit cracked, a little bit unsteady, a little bit unaligned, well, that depends. The greater the house is going to be, the greater the structure is going to be taller, then it's more susceptible to falling down. So if someone builds a little house on a decent foundation, right? Okay, it's gonna last. But the greater the building is, you're gonna see a more of a issue when even it's a little bit off, just a little bit of a incline on the foundation. Well, now if you want to make a 20-story building, that 20-story building is not going to be straight. It's going to be leaning. and then it's leaving Tower of Pisa, and then it's going to fall down. All right. So with Yerovam ben Nevat, he was such a great Torah scholar, and at the end of the day, what happened? He used his Torah scholars, his wisdom, to be able to permit the golden calves that he wanted to set up, and he was even able to fool one of the greatest Torah scholars of his generation, which was the Gemara goes into, and it says that he was able to get him to sign a contract that said, to set them up. He basically used his wisdom, and it's not something throughout generations. You see someone who has greater Torah scholars, and it's sometimes brought out in the Gemara that they're able to metaher asheretz. They're able to purify that which is impure. Through their rhetoric, through their kal vachomer, through their ability to wrap the Torah, they're so well versed in the Torah. They're able to change it for their agenda, and so that's why we're saying it's a very fine line especially with the Torah. Right, the greater the power, the greater responsibility, and so. Over here, the Ramchal is saying that with the Torah, you have to be very careful. It's a profound wisdom, and that's why we need to have, first and foremost, Yirat Hashem, fear of Hashem. Now, once you have fear of Hashem, now you're going to have to go into it, study it, completely understand it, but don't start because once you have Yirat Hashem, don't start saying, this is what sounds good to me, or this is my opinion. Because Yirat Hashem is that I'm nullifying myself to Hashem. Hashem is that greater source of knowledge, and like what we said, I'm just a pipe. I'm just a way to draw that wisdom down into this world. Now, if I put in a pipe, the pipe works best when it's empty, right? That way the water can come out. But if I start putting things into the pipe, it's going to start causing blockages, and then it's not going to come down correctly, or it's going to start coming a little worse. Same thing with a person. If a person nullifies himself to Hashem, especially with regards to the Torah, then he's able to draw all of these wisdoms through Hashem. And like what we said, that's the darga, that's the level of Kedusha and Yirat Shamayim, and then therefore he'll be able to get Ruach HaKodesh. But if not, then all he's going to be doing is going to be putting himself in the way, and that's going to be causing blockages, and that can come to faulty thinking and cause issues, especially when he starts teaching halacha or teaching things. He can be teaching chas v'shalom in the wrong ways.
It'll be the same thing with Korach, how he decided he wanted to be in.
Yeah. Korach also. It's a good example of someone who was a Torah giant. It says that the Rav Tzadok min Lublin brings down that there were two people that knew the secret of the Para Aduma. That's why Chukat is the Parsha of Para Aduma is before Korach, because Moshe Rabbeinu learned the secret of Para Aduma, the red heifer, but he learned it from Hashem. He said, Rav Tzadok min Lublin says, Korach learned the secret of Para Aduma from his own wisdom. He was such a holy, righteous person. He was one of the people to carry the ark. Because the ark carried them, right? Because they don't carry the ark carries you. To be on such a high level, meaning he was basically the closest thing to the ark on a consistent basis, and he was able to make such a grave mistake. Also, it came from the issue of what? A little bit of gava, a little bit of ego, a little bit of kavod, a little bit of haughtiness, and that's what just caused the whole building to fall, as we saw. So that's what he's trying to say here. And that's the whole purpose of this book. The whole purpose of this book is to get to the person to understand that as much as Torah study is important, also the study of Musar, of building your character traits, is maybe even more important. The Nefesh HaChaim brings down that you should learn 15 minutes of Musar every day, whatever it may be, Messilat Yesharim, or Chot Tzadikim, because it gives you the foundation to then build the rest of the Torah that you're learning the rest of the day. Umi shitbonen b'mireh, someone who contemplates these matters. We'll see if you want. There's a book here. She'ein hachasidut תלוי באותם הדברים שיחשבו המתחסדים הטיפשים. So now he's going to talk about the ill-conceived notion of what is Hasidut, of piety. Back then, if we were looking to history, it was a time of the Hasidut movement was emerging, especially in Europe. There was, this is the times of the Gra, the Gaon Vilna, a little bit before the Gaon Vilna, and so we're looking at the times of also the Baal Shem Tov, the times that all of the Hasidut movement has started also to make its way into Europe. And so he just wants to lay the tracks record straight. What is real Hasidut? Because again, nowadays especially, we unfortunately think, what is a chassid? A chassid is someone with payas, and he wears a strimal, and he's going to say, no, that might be what Hasidim are, but Hasidut, right? Piety is something different. So ela bedivrei shlemut amiti. It's piety is something that is Hasidut. It's something that involves true perfection of the person. As we're going to see that Hasidut is the midpoint between a regular person and Kadosh, someone who can bring things back to life. And it's going to be, we're going to see in a second, that he really breaks his sefer into 3 parts. And Hasidut is the time is a transition between leaving things of this world. At that point, you've already left all of the sins, all of the mundane, materialistic, physical aspects of this world, and you've started to attach yourself to the spiritual, to Hashem. The idea of Hasid, chesed, is the root of Hasidut, is kindness. And we'll see that the true purpose of this Hasidut is to do kindness with Hashem, again to connect with Hashem. hu ma Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom melamed beomro, and this is what Moshe is coming to teach. Sorry, ela b'divrei shlemut amiti v'chokhma rabba. Right, and we're going to see that the piety, true piety, comes from the perfection of a person's refinement of his attributes and the great wisdom. hu ma Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom melamedenu beomro. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu said in Dvarim, ואתה ישראל, מה השם אלוהיך שואל מעמך, כי אם לירא את השם אלוהיך, ללכת בכל דרכיו ולעבור אותו, ולעבוד את השם אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך, לשמור את מצוות השם ואת חוקותיו. That Moshe is saying, now Israel, what does Hashem ask of you, other than to fear Hashem, to walk in His ways, to love Him, and to serve Him, and that you will work Hashem with all of your heart and all your soul, and to observe all the commandments that Hashem has and His decrees. The Gemara comments on this. Gemara says, Moshe Rabbeinu, for you maybe it's easy, but for us not. Why? Because his language is, what does Hashem ask of you now? Now Hashem, what does Hashem ask you? Something small, nothing too great, only to fear Him and love Him with all of your heart and all of your soul. All right, so you can work Him perfectly. So the Gemara says, okay, Moshe, for you that might have been easy, but for the rest of us, that's a lifetime work. That's something that's going to take us forever. So the Gemara just comments on that. It's funny. It's interesting to note that they say that this pasuk, this verse, has 100. It has 99 letters, and they you can read it as Ve'ata Hashem ma Hashem. What does Hashem ask of you? And they said, Al tikre ma, don't read it as ma, what? Ela mea. Read it as 100. And they said this is a hint to the obligation to do 100 blessings a day. Because what's the idea of a blessing to Hashem? And so when you change, hold on before then, when you change ma to mea, you're adding an aleph. And like we said, there was 99 letters in the pasuk. If you add the aleph, then it makes it to 100. Which 100 is always completion. 100 is always perfection. And so the idea of this, especially in this pasuk, right? Why specifically in this pasuk do we have this hint towards making the 100 blessings a day? Is because the idea of a blessing, and especially if you're obligated with 100 blessings a day, you're always on that mindset on how am I connecting to Hashem? Everything that I'm doing now isn't something mundane. It's something, how can I connected to Hashem. I'm eating right now. It's something that's physical. But when I make a blessing on it, I'm saying that this physical act is becoming something of holy nature. I'm able to transform the physical into something spiritual just by making the blessing before and after. And then throughout the day, with whatever you might be doing, you're always thinking on, okay, how am I going to get to that 100? Because through tefillot and through prayers, you're not going to be able to get it to that 100 alone. And especially on Shabbat and on fast days, when we don't eat or we have less prayers, less blessings throughout the day, we have to keep our minds even more so. That's another reason why they say Shabbat. Shabbat's a holy day. But specifically, why is it why is it a holy day? Because you have to pay attention more on how many blessings you're going to get. Because you're not going to get the 100 blessings just from going to prayers, just from the basic seudot, from the basic eating. You have to do other ways of methods of increasing your blessings to get to that 100 a day. Whether it may be smelling different fragrances, whether it may be eating a little bit extra, like we do, is we eat a little bit extra. And so the idea, again, of a blessing is connecting to Hashem and bringing Hashem into this world. And we're going to say that that's really the idea of the Ramchal, is to get you to the understanding that everything that we do through this throughout the day, if you're imbuing Hashem, holiness into it, then nothing that you do is a physical act. And that's what we're going to say, the highest level of Kedusha, someone who gets to that level, he's living on a different plane of existence, even though he's on this world. In this world, we see everything's physical, but he's able to take anything physical and elevate it to a spiritual being. That's why it says, in general, the Pirkei Avot, and it usually says, is an Ama Aretz, an ignoramus, someone who isn't learned, cannot eat meat. And the idea of that is because the meat, we have to take the meat and we have to imbue it with spirituality. We have to take what the nitzotzot, the sparks of kedusha in that, and bring it back to Hashem. And an Amma Aretz who isn't able to have the right intentions and make the right blessings when he's eating it, then how is he able to bless on it? This is interesting, actually. In this week's parsha, we learned that Korach was gifted the kehuna. One of the gifts of the kehuna is that he gets certain parts of the Pinchas. Sorry, I'm still on Pinchas. yeah. Pinchas was rewarded the Kohanic status, and we know the Kohanic status that you get certain gifts as a token of appreciation to the Kohanim, and especially with regards to the korbanot, with the animals, we give them the maw, the foreleg, and so we give them certain parts of the animal to show appreciation. So in one of the Perushim, it says that why that's the only gift. If you look at throughout the 24 Kohanic gifts, it's the only gift that uses a lashon of mishpat. That it means that it's something that is rewarded to him not as a sense of a present, but as something as a because he did something, he deserves it. It's almost as if he deserves it. So they ask, the Mefarshim ask, why in this specific present does he deserve these different parts of the body of the animals, different meat? And so one of the Mefarshim bring down that Adam Harishon, he wasn't able to eat meat because after his sin, there was no difference between him and the animal in the sense that they after he sinned, he lost that spirituality, and him and the animals were on the same plane, same level, until Noach came around, and Noach saved all the animals from the flood. At that point, he had a higher level to the rest of the animals, and he was able to eat all of those animals. Now, going throughout history, we had that, I guess, elevated level over the animals. Now, when Zimri and all of Shevet Shimon and all of Israel was doing immorality with these women, well, they again lost that elevated level, because what separates a man from an animal if there's just mindless immorality? They're saying that there's no difference between you and the animal, that an animal also can go ahead and be immoral, because there's no morals with animals. And so at that point, Israel lost the merit to eat meat again. That's what this, I forget which Mefarish brings down, but Israel lost the ability to eat meat until Pinchas killed and brought Seder back into the camp. And at that point, he reinstated the ability for the Jews to eat meat. So as a token appreciation, we always bring the Kohen, the Ma, the foreleg, to remember that if it wasn't for Pinchas and the whole situation, we wouldn't be able to eat meat again. And so when we say Am Haaretz can't eat meat, the idea is that he's not able to connect the physical act of eating to Hashem. And so that's what's hinted over here in the pasuk of Ma Hashem. Don't read it as Ma, as Elamea, that you have to get the 100 psukim blessings a day. So the Ramchal continues, says, Kan klal kol chelkei shlemut avodah hanirtzed l'Hashem yitbarach. So Moshe gives you the guidelines. He breaks it down really if you look at this pasuk. Vehem hayira, first and foremost is the fear of Hashem, like we've been talking about. Halicha bidrachav, walking in His ways. Meaning sometimes you can have fear of a God, but you have to also know what He wants. As we saw with the spies made the sin, even though they were, again, people of the fear of God. You know, they were great people. The problem was that they weren't going in God's ways. God wanted them to go into Eretz Yisrael. Of course, they had good intentions. On one side, the spies said, well, listen, in the desert, we're learning Torah, we don't have any worries, there's a tzniut, there's harmony, we're being fed, everything's coming from Shemaim, we have the well, we have laundry, we just put our clothes outside, they get laundried, we come back the next day, the clothes would grow with them, they would never have to buy new clothes. It says the shoes, the clothes, everything would grow with them. They said, what do we need to go into Eretz Yisrael for? What do we need to go to Israel for? Everything we have is here is the best. It's the best. We're living in Gan Eden. Why do we need to go to Israel? So they came up with this plan, not for out of anything, out of treachery or out of rebelliousness out of Hashem, but rather to bring themselves closer to Hashem. The problem was that's not Ratzon Hashem. That's not Hashem's will. And so what the Ramchal here is saying when we're saying that walking in His ways is you have to know what Hashem wants. And Hashem's telling you sometimes what He wants, especially when we have the Torah, we have the Halacha, we have the sages to help bring that down into practical lessons. That's sometimes not for us to bring into our own hands. Like we said, you shouldn't come and bring your own opinions onto a matter that you have to listen to Hashem for. And so it's very important that not only do you have fear of Hashem, but you have to also go in His path. Of course, also ahava, we have to love Hashem, shlemut alev, and do this with the completeness of love, of a heart. And like what we say, bekol levavecha, and the famous drasha, the famous explanation of what does it mean levavecha, with your two hearts, right? With both the evil inclination and also with the good inclination. You have to work Hashem with both of them. Ushmirat kol mitzvot, and of course, observance of all the mitzvot. Like the Gemara says that you might think that, okay, I'm not doing bad, I love Hashem, I fear Hashem, I'm walking in His ways, why do I need to do mitzvot? No, then you're not doing what Hashem wants. Hashem wants you to do the mitzvot. The mitzvot are a way to, again, connect to Hashem. Mitzvah is from the Lashon metzitz, to draw. And so you're drawing in Hashem into this world. It says mitzvah, if you take the letters of mitzvah, it's mem tzadik, vav hey. So the last two letters, Vav Hey, are the same two ending letters of Hashem's name, Vav Hey. But Mem Tzadik, if you do this thing called Atbash, which Atbash is you take the first letter and you interchange it with the last letter, Taf. You take the Bet and you interchange it with the Shin. If you do that with Mem and Tzadik, Mem, if you do the opposite of it, or the reflection of it, I guess you get is Yud, and Tzadik is Hey. So really Mem Tzadik is Yud Hey. And so it's Yud Hey and then Vav Hey. Really mitzvah is Hashem. And when you're doing a mitzvah, we said you're really drawing from Hashem itself. You're drawing Hashem. So someone thinks I'm loving Hashem, I'm fearing Hashem, but I don't need to do the mitzvah. No, of course you have to do the mitzvah. That's the most important. You're drawing Hashem, Kedusha, spirituality into this physical world.
So I was reading called the Torah. It talked about each mitzvah requires specific deed to be performed. So that's what you're talking about. When When we're following Hashem, if we don't do what the commandments say, then we're not really following Him. Because His will is for us to do what where specific actions required from each one of the commandments.
Correct. It says that there's 613 commandments, 248 positive, and 365 negative. And they say it corresponds to the body. There's 248 evarim, limbs, bones, and then 365 sinews and ligaments. And so it says that the Torah isn't just a spirit; it's a spiritual, metaphysical thing, but it's also embodied into the human himself. And so when he does mitzvot, that's manifesting itself in the body. One time the Arizal in Tzfat, someone came to the Arizal and he said that his shoulder was hurting. He came with a problem with his shoulder. So the Arizal looked at him. He said, "Do you do Mayim Achronim? You know, the last waters after you eat bread. You're supposed to do Mayim Achronim, last waters, and then you can do the Birkat Hamazon." He said, I try to do it the best as I can, but sometimes here and there I mess up. There's not enough water. So the Arizal said, well, that's your problem. That's why your shoulder is hurting you. It's because you're not doing Mayim Achronim. He said, how do you know? He said, because the Gemara says, Techef netila bracha, that immediately after doing the netila, the washing of the hands, of the ending waters, you have to start the blessing. He said techef is also the word, if you switch the letters, is katef, is shoulder. So over there, he said, how didn't you see that? You should have seen it from you're a learned man, you should have seen it. Techef netilat bracha. So techef is otiyot ketef, that's why katef, that's why your shoulder is hurting. So you see the mitzvot are represented in the human body more so than we think. And so when we go ahead and we do actions, we do mitzvot, we're really drawing Kedusha into this world. Now he's going to bring down, the Ramchal is going to bring down kind of a step-by-step how to understand these commandments. Ha'ira hi yirat haromemut itbarach. We're going to see there's a certain levels of fear. And so he's saying that yira isn't the basic level of yira, which most people think fear of punishment, fear of sin. This is a more exalted level called Yirat HaRomemut. And that's going to be one of the later levels that he brings down in the Sefer, is Yirat HaRomemut, the fear of his exaltedness. This can be described as someone who, for example, nowadays it's hard to really imagine it because we don't have a king, or we don't have someone that we can fear. But lahavdil, when we're talking about, let's say, a president or someone that derives kavod, when we come to him, or like a big rabbi, if you go to, if you have ever been to the Stipler or back where Rav Chaim Kanievsky, you get into the room and you freeze up. You can't even formulate words. That's Yirat HaRomemut. When you get frozen in your tracks, that you can't go ahead and you can't speak. That not because you're afraid physically, because Rav Chaim Kanievsky was this old. You saw the Rav Chaim Kanievsky. He couldn't hurt a fly. You would think he wouldn't be able to hurt a fly, but you came into the room and you're frozen. You couldn't move. And so the same thing with Hashem, that we have to always have this idea that not afraid out of that He's going to hurt us, but out of His greatness. Yeah, out of awe. Right? That what we said is someone that is afraid of not afraid, but he's of awe of this great and awesome King. Again, when unfortunately we don't have that mashal, we don't have similarity to today, because we've lost the status of what a king really is. And not only that, one should feel humbled by his greatness. And the greater the person is, the greater the king is, suddenly you stand straighter, your posture is greater. You make sure that you're always, make sure you don't have any wrinkles, you don't have any spots on your clothes. You've already, you're meeting the king, so you're wearing the nicest clothes. You're making sure that you're standing up straighter. You don't want to say anything. You kept your phone on silent. Maybe you didn't even bring your phone. But someone doesn't go to the king with their phone out, and that's why I'm shocked that people come to the shul and in the middle of prayers they come take their phone out. What is that? Well, you're not in front of God right now in the middle of prayers. It's the same thing, right? It's just the mindset. No, non Shabbat. But you're talking to the king. Al kol tenu'a shehu ba lidnonea. And every movement that he makes, you're making sure that every movement that you're making, it's not, someone comes into the king, they don't want to trip in front of the king. That would be so embarrassing. So they're making sure they're walking very carefully, making sure that they're not doing anything that would embarrass himself in front of the king. And then how much more so when he's speaking to him in prayer, that to make sure that he's enunciating every word correctly. No one talks to their friend like blah, 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 right? You don't talk to your friend like that. How much more so the King of all Kings, right? When you make a blessing, Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Shehakol Nihya Bidvaro, right? That you want to make sure that each word is enunciated and not swallowed.
So how come we can do Zukei Zimmer in 5 to 10 minutes?
That's a great question. That blows me out. You're right. And then how much more so when they're engaging in the Torah, which the Torah is an even higher level than tefillah, even higher level of prayer, that it's able to mamash, you're attaching yourself at that point to Hashem. There was once a person that came to, I think it was Rav Chaim Kanievsky, that he came to, what's Rav Chaim? Maybe. He came to him and asked him, Rabbi, when we're in a chavruta, I'm learning with my chavruta, I want to have a smoke. I can have a smoke. No, Rav Chaim's like, what are you talking about? You can't have smoke in the middle of learning. Get out of here, this and that. So he goes to his friend. He says, "Listen, I don't know. We can't smoke." He goes, "No. You need to know how to ask the question." So he went to Rav Chaim Kanievsky and he said, "Rabbi, when we're smoking, can we learn Torah?" I was like, "Sure, of course. What a great, of course." So, but we have to come with the right mindset when we're coming to learn Torah. Of course, asking the question is always the most important.
One quick question, particularly for American and English-based audience, is if pronunciation of the Hebrew, is it better to say the words in English when you dive in?
So there's going to be some parts. I would imagine that there's some parts that you would want to say it in English, especially if you can understand what you're saying more. Then the whole point of prayer is connecting to Hashem. There's some points of the prayer that we should say it in the Hebrew language, but if you don't understand it, then it's kind of counterintuitive. You're just being a robot. That the idea, at least when I pray, I try to do this every time, is I try to get inspired, try to learn something from the prayer, something new, something that excites you. Because if you're going through the same robotic act every day, then you're going to come out with the same kind of mindset, same kind of attitude every day of the year. But if you can, I can't hear. Can you guys hear on? That's not good. Okay.
12.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's the idea is to create a relationship with Hashem. Prayers isn't a method of talking to a wall. It's a means of connecting with Hashem. Yes.
What are the prayers we should try to say in Hebrew?
Some of the prayers that I believe that you should try saying in Hebrew is like the Shmona Esrei, the Shema. Those are Psukat Zimra. I believe that you should be able to do those, especially in English, especially since the idea of Psukat Zimra is a introduction, is a trying to get you into the mindset, trying to get you closer to Hashem, build you up. That I believe is something that you should be able to say in English, whatever your native tongue, whatever you can understand it more. They can hear now. Okay, perfect.
But I also heard it said that listening to Hebrew. So I follow along in English, and sometimes I'm trying to figure out exactly where they're at, because there's certain verses that I know already, so I can catch up.
Mm-hmm.
But it also I heard it say that if you listen to the prayers in Hebrew, that's also a good thing. Just listening to the Hebrew language.
As if you were actually doing the prayers.
So there's this idea called Shomea Ke'oneh, that if you listen, it's as if you have said it. And that's how we generally, there's a lot of halachot, for example, reading of the Torah, that usually when someone goes to read to the Torah, that you have an aliyah, someone who goes up to the Torah, they're the ones that are supposed to read the Torah. But we nowadays, we're not well versed with the Torah, so we have a Bal Koreh, someone to read it for you. And so then over there we say, even though we're making the blessing on the Torah, we say Shomea Kaoneh. What we're hearing is like we're saying it itself. But when we're having individual, and that's how we have generally a chazan, a shliach tzibur, someone who is up there and praying. But that's if you just want to be yotzi, you just want to fulfill your basic obligation. Now, if someone wants to go above and beyond, right, and the idea of prayer isn't just to say you check the boxes, because everyone can check the boxes. Like what we said, you can do Psikudei Dezimra in Hebrew, you can do all of the prayer in Hebrew in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you've done what you've needed to be done. But that's the idea of this book is we don't want, as Jews, we're not striving to be on the basic level of, okay, I check the boxes. We want to always be we always want to grow in our relationship. Judaism shouldn't be looked at as a set of guidelines that you need to fulfill, and if you fulfill them, then you get reward, and if you get reward, then you'll be happy. No, the idea of Judaism is a relationship. And that's what changes Judaism from a lot of different religions, is that it's not a set of restrictions. It's a set of guidelines, how to live your life so you can connect yourself to Hashem. Like what we said, mitzvot isn't restrictions. It's not commandments. It's guidelines. It's mitzvah. How you can bring holiness into this world. And so and we'll see that once we get into the later chapters, that the difference really between a tzaddik and a regular person is all just in the mind, because they can be doing the same thing. It's just how are you doing it, and what are you thinking about when you're doing it. One person can go to work, or one person can learn all day, 9 to 5. He comes to kollel. Not saying this kollel is good, but a different kollel. And what is he thinking about the whole time? He's thinking about the Rangers game, or his mind is somewhere else. All right. So he's learning for 9 hours, 8 hours, whatever it may be, an hour even. But where's his head? His head's somewhere else. And if your head's somewhere else, that means you weren't learning. On the opposite side, there can be someone who's working. He's at his office, and he's so he had the daf yomi. He did the daf yomi. Something's bothering him the whole day. How did they understand that in the Gemara? And it's bothering him so throughout the whole 9 hours he's working. He's doing the work, but at the back of his mind, he's still thinking about that Gemara that I don't understand it. I don't get it. So that guy who was working 9 hours is as if he studied the whole 9 hours. Because it depends on where are your thoughts. If I'm working now and I'm saying I'm working now in order to bring parnasah, to bring money for my family so that they can do the service of Hashem, that I can send my child to a Jewish school, that my wife can make food and we can live a Torah life, then everything that I'm doing that day, even though it's mundane, it's work, it's physical, whatever it may be, I've transcended to a kedusha, holy level, because now I'm imbuing godliness into it. And that's, we're going to say, it's very, very simple to say it, but it's a lifetime of effort to switch that mindset from something that is physical, mundane, something that, okay, I'm eating right now, to something that I'm using that food to power me to become something more spiritual. So that's what he said is fear of God. Hahalicha bidrachav. Now this is the second part that we're saying that Moshe enumerated, is kolel kol inyan yosher amidot v'atikunam. This includes all refinement of the character traits and their improvement. Behu ma shebe'arnu zichonan livracha. And this is what the sages said. Ma hu rachum af atarachum. That just like Hashem is compassionate, so too you're compassionate. It was actually over Shabbat, it was the yortzeit of the Ramak, Rav Moshe Cardavero. He was the teacher of the Arizal. He wrote a sefer called Tomer Dovora. It's a famous sefer, Tomer Dovora. And over there, he goes through the 13 attributes of kindness of Hashem, and he enumerates and lists how we have to go about our lives doing those attributes. So like what we just said, Mahu Rachum, just like Hashem is compassionate, so too we have to be compassionate. He goes through and explains how we have to be compassionate, just like Hashem is compassionate. Erech Apayim, how God is slow to anger, so too we have to be slow to anger. And so we see that we really have to follow Hashem in suit in order to get to this level of perfection. And the general rule of all of this, שינהג האדם כל מידות וכל מיני פועלות על פי היושר המוסר. And a person has to guide his character traits and all the various actions based on the integrity and ethical principles, which the Ramchal is going to list it, and that's the whole point of this of this sefer, is to enumerate that. And the sages put this into a simple way of saying it. That a person should adopt a manner that is praiseworthy for the one who practices it and earns his praise from other people. Anything that you do when you're following Hashem's ways, then you want to make sure that those ways are seen good to others. If someone is, for example, fasting all day and he comes to shul and he looks like he's about to die, and he's giving off that impression, he doesn't want to talk to anybody because he's so hungry, he's hangry, and so that's not what Hashem wants from you. Hashem wants you to be someone that's loved by all. If you're trying to attain holiness by someone who is separating himself from the tzibur, we're going to see that that's not considered holy. You can do that. Don't get me wrong. You can, if someone's on that level and he wants to fast all day, that's amazing, but that shouldn't detract from your service of God. That shouldn't detract from who you are, how you interact, and so. And that's again one of his Ramchal is trying to dispel the notion that Hasidut, that piety, I think he said it earlier, is someone who goes and dips in the cold mikvah and the snow, and someone who does all these long sessions of tehillim and fasts. Saying that's not the idea. Is how can, and this is what he's saying from the Pirkei Avot, is something that I do that is good for me, but is also good for others. That others can see it and be like, oh, that's a man of God. They can see it on the person himself. That's not that, oh man, miskin, I don't want to be him. I don't want to be this person. Another fast, I don't want to get close to him. It's something that you should be in, but like, wow, that's something I want my son to grow up to be. That's a tzaddik that you see that his whole personality, his whole mindset is dveikus, is cleaving to Hashem. דהיינו כל ההולך אל תכלית ההטבה האמיתית, דהיינו שתולדתה חיזוק התורה ותיקון החווה והמידות. So he says, in other words, any character trait that leads to the ultimate benefit, meaning the tikkun olam, meaning that something that's going to strengthen you in observance of Torah, and the advancement of friendship among the community. We see two things, right? That's what we're saying, that there's the one aspect that whatever the idea, whatever you're doing that you believe that's going to get you closer to Hashem, it shouldn't detract from your Torah study. So, for example, again, we're going to bring the example of someone who fasts, for example. If the person fasts, but now he's going to have to take a nap, or he's not going to be able to learn as well because of that fast, then don't do that. Don't do the fast. Rather,
that's a header? We get
on personal fast. Personal fasts.
Oh.
Personal fast. You were waiting for that one.
Can you say that again? We have you on video.
Personal fasts. And also, it's something that's a v'tikun achva midot. It's something that should advance his friendship among the community. Again, it's something that needs to inspire people to come closer to Hashem and not make them fearful of these acts. Ha'ahava sheyeh nikba belev ha'adam ahava elav yitbarach. The love of God, it needs to be something that's so ingrained in the person ad shetitorer nafsho la'asoto nachad ruach lefanav, that he's inspired to please Hashem, just like a person is inspired to please his father and his mother. We'll see, what does that come out to? Is that just like let's say a wife, right, or a husband, that just like the person knows his spouse so well that they know that when they come home from work, the first thing they want is the cup of coffee. So they come home at work at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. So I'm going to have at 4:55 the kettle on, that I can put the coffee, a cup of the hot water in the coffee to make the coffee. So by the time they get home, they get hot coffee. Right? All of this backstory of thinking just to come, and when your husband or wife comes home and they say, "How are you? Oh, you had a good day. Here's the coffee," and then you see the smile on their face, that means the world to you. That's what you're doing it all for. I'm saying that's how you have to act with Hashem. That every act that you're doing, that you always have to, that's what meaning to go above and beyond. That's the idea of going above and beyond. Isn't because someone wants to be the perfect student, because the perfect student, let's say in a school scenario, he's only a perfect student until there's no more school. Summer break right now, what is he? He's not the perfect student, he's on break. But someone who lives in a life that he's always like a child to his father, a spouse, to their loved ones, that they're always anticipating, wanting to know exactly what pleases them, how can I do that, and how can I do that before he even asks for it. That's the idea of ahava, of loving Hashem. ויצטער אם חסר זה מצידו או מאחרים ויקנא על זה, and it'll be he will be pained for someone who neglects this, and that's what we saw in this week's parsha, right? He'll be zealous so that other people will emulate him in his perfection. That sometimes you see someone that's not doing, if you have a different sibling and you love your parents so much, and that sibling is not going in the ways that your parents raised you to be, it hurts you. You want to go to that person and be like, your sibling, okay, let's figure out how can we go ahead and change ourselves so that we can make our parents happier. Similarly here, especially with Pinchas, right? He saw that what was happening was not only making Hashem sad, but it was angering Hashem to the point where it was causing a plague. And he had to go about in a way to end it in order to bring happiness back to Hashem. As it says, as Heshiva Chamati, he was able to withdraw my anger. And he will be elated when he does something to this end. Meaning that Hashem, he will derive happiness from bringing happiness to Hashem. That's his source of happiness. His source of happiness is that Hashem is happy from his actions. And when someone lives that way, it says, Kol ahava talui badavar, any love that is dependent on something, when that something goes away, then the love goes away. But if something if the love isn't dependent on anything, then the love continues forever. We have to all take into ourselves to do introspection on why do we love Hashem. Do we love Hashem because He gives us money, because He gives us health, because He gave us children, He gave us happiness, air conditioning, we're not outside in the sweltering level? Or we love Hashem because Hashem loves us. We're making Hashem's happy, we're happy because Hashem's happy. If you live life that way, then you'll never see the love decease, you'll never see the happiness decease, because your love isn't dependent on anything, and your happiness isn't depending on anything that's going to go away, because Hashem is always going to be happy as long as you do what you need to be done, and Hashem's love for us is eternal. And so, children, family, learning, all of these things are great sources of happiness, but they shouldn't be the source of happiness. It shouldn't be the reason why we're happy. The reason why we should be happy is because we have Hashem. That's something that we should all be happy for every day, is that we're able to live a Jewish life, that we're able to see Hashem in our lives. That in and of itself is a source of happiness that we should be happy for. And because of that, someone who is always with that mindset that how can I make Hashem happier, kivyachol, by doing the mitzvot, by making sure that I'm always doing the right things, not looking at the wrong things, not saying the wrong things, as long as I'm always, that's the forefront of my mind, then you're never going to come to sin. You're never going to come to do something wrong because you don't want to be unhappy. And therefore, if you don't want to be unhappy, don't make Hashem unhappy. And so, it sounds so simple. So simple. But then when the test comes along, when someone has that juicy gossip that they want to give out, that juicy lashon hara, well, then suddenly we forget that Hashem is in the room with us. We suddenly forget that that our happiness is dependent on Him, and that's why you'll see someone who does a sin, someone who doesn't go in the ways of Hashem. Almost, it depends on the person, but immediately after he regrets. What's the idea of regret? The idea of regret is, so what's the idea of shame? Is that I didn't do what Hashem wanted me to do. That I didn't meet His expectations. And when one doesn't meet the expectations, that is the source of sadness, right? That's when you start getting sad. But if you never did the sin, then there was never regret and there was never sadness, because you're always connected to Hashem. Yirat Hashem will continue next week on Shlemut Halev, and then we'll finally bring in the famous bright of Pinchas ben Yair that he based his whole sefer on, and they have a nice. I saw they have a nice note over here from Rav Moshe Shapira, so I printed that out so we can learn that a little bit together next week. Yirat Hashem.
Thank you.